Gotta get good, gotta get good. Hello? No, I'm not interested in a free footlong sub. Yes, I am aware of the allegations. What? You can write on the sub? Like if it was someone's birthday or something? I don't see how that changes anything for me personally, but I guess you could... Wait, does that make you a subscribe? Hello, friends and lovers, it's Haelian. I finally got the kind of video that you've been asking for. This is going to be my top 6 most overpowered builds in Hades 2, and I've got one selected for every single weapon. So I'll be showing off what I feel are the highest damage output builds available in the game and how you can get them. But I'm also curious what builds have worked well for you and which ones you think could deliver a lot of damage. So make sure you let me know down in the comments. And with that, let's get started. So for the staff, we're going to be using Aspect of Circe, but I do feel like all of the staff aspects are pretty close to each other in terms of power level. Circe just so happens to have the perfect storm of easy to build and high damage potential, particularly with the build that I have in mind. By the way, here's the Arcana card loadout I'll be using for most of the runs, but I'll let you know if there's any important changes here for any particular build. For every build that we talk about here, do not forget about Origination. This damage bonus is massive, and it is always worth building around this one Arcana card, so make sure you're keeping up 2 curses on enemies at all times. Also, please use Strength, I promise it's good, and the Death Defiance Council has been lying to you. So Aspect of Circe simply allows you to have 2 casts down at once, which obviously means we're going to have to lean in on a cast build. The pet choice is probably not as important as you think, despite the second cast dropping on them, but I would say the only wrong pet here is maybe Freenos, since he kinda just follows Mel around. Sorry, Freenos. Tuller works really well, but you do need to wake her up to get the most use out of her, and it does mean you couldn't use the Strength Arcana card as well. I'll just be using Rocky in the example, since it's straightforward and easy to use. You'll want to start with Zeus's Keepsake so that you can immediately start the run with Storm Ring, Zeus's cast. There are a few reasons for this, but this is going to come up a lot. So to put it simply, Zeus is OP. The simple combo of getting Storm Ring now and hoping to get Blitz from Zeus's special boon later is easily enough to win a run on its own. Ideally, you'll then get Double Strike quickly and just a second curse besides Blitz from another god, which is probably plenty enough to just win the run as is. Now, this is a good run, but how do we turn it into an OP run? Well, the answer is Hera. But not because you want the effects of her boons. You see, we're looking to lure her into our trap of torment just so that we can then forsake her very being. So the hope is to get at least these 3 Zeus boons, then as many Hera boons as possible. Then you get King's Ransom duo boon to purge all of the Hera boons and buff all of the Zeus into the Mega Chad that he was born to be. The crazy thing about this build is that you don't even need to use any magic. Omegas just aren't important, and the hammers aren't even that important for it either, since most of your damage will be coming from your cast and Blitz. If you are applying Blitz with your special, then Shimmering Moonshot is a nice pickup, I will say, just to apply that Blitz rapidly to everything in a chamber. Okay, so for the daggers, we gotta talk about Hef. The thing with Hef is that he actually works with any weapon, but can be a bit tough to get going. You kind of need to decide to do a juicy ding-dong run ahead of time. You don't often stumble into one since the rarity of his attack and special boon are really important. You have to get a high rarity, and then you really need to palm that attack or special several times in order for it to feel good. But my god, once you do, that's a spicy potato? Palming these boons won't increase the damage, but will instead lower the cooldown for how often you can proc it, meaning that each subsequent palm actually has an increased effect instead of diminishing returns like with every other boon that you can palm. Now there is a cap of 2 seconds for his attack, special, and dash boon, however, you can lower it just a touch more by getting the Seismic Servo duo from Poseidon. The tooltip will read it as being a 1 second cooldown at the cap, but I'm afraid that's a lie and the actual cooldown is closer to 1.6 seconds. I cannot believe Amir did this to us. Now, there's still a lot more work to do here. So first, you need a high rarity Hef attack or special, then a boon from Poseidon for the Seismic Servo duo, then ideally a boon from Hestia for the Chain Reaction duo, then a boon from Apollo that will apply daze so that you can get the Rude Awakening duo, then you'll want Grand Caldera from Hef to increase your ding-dong damage, then Furnace Glow, then another Hef boon. It's a lot. The big priority is getting that cooldown as low as possible and getting Chain Reaction from Hestia. You could settle for Aphrodite and go for her Love Handles duo, or Demeter and aim for Cryo Pounder. They're just not quite as good as the others. Alright, so I guess I better talk about the weapon now, huh? I'm choosing Aspect of Morrigan for the daggers because it kinda pairs well with Hef, and the truth is, I don't know if any of the other dagger aspects really stand out that far above the rest. Morrigan pairs well because it incentivizes you to use both your attack and special in order to get the triad damage. Triad? Or triad? Anyway, this means when you start your run with Hef's Keepsake, you can choose either the attack or special, whichever is a higher rarity, but the attack is generally better because the cooldown starts lower. The best way to get a lot of triad damage is going to be to throw a special, then dash attack right into an omega attack. It's dangerous, but you can dish out a lot of damage quickly this way. For hammers, Sweeping Ambush is probably my favorite, but Phantom Brand, Banshee Brand, and Final Slicer are all quite nice too. I have to make an honorable mention here, though, that the Trick Knives Hammer is an absolute monster and easily wins runs on its own. However, you can't get it with Aspect of Morrigan, so if you see it with any other dagger aspect, just take it and start dash striking everywhere for an easy win. Okay, so the torches were an easier choice because Aspect of Moros is just so utterly titular. Titular? What the hell? It's honestly kind of hard to mess up a build with Moros because of how strong those attack blasts are. Just charge an Omega Special when you walk into a room, then hold down the attack button and watch everything explode. Recharge the Omega Special when necessary. The best start is to probably grab Zeus's Special just to get that blitz damage popping nice and early. This way we open up the possibility of getting some other nice duo boons, namely Thermal Dynamics, Killer Current, or Romantic Spark. Or all three. You could also just mimic the Circe build and go for King's Ransom, but let's aim for something else here. So start with Zeus's Special, then get Hestia's Attack, then Poseidon's Cast, then let's say Aphrodite's Dash. You'll need some decent magic regen for this build, so Zeus's, Hestia's, or Poseidon's should work just fine, but Glamour Gain from Aphrodite might not be enough since it doesn't regenerate while you're channeling Omegas. With this setup, you can now aim for the duo boons we discussed, along with some other nice additions. Double Strike from Zeus, Pyrotechnique from Hestia, maybe Shameless Attitude from Aphrodite. The two-part combo of just Blitz and Scorch is incredibly strong on its own, so you could always just aim for that if you think I'm asking for too much. If you do get Romantic Spark, the nice thing about the torches is that you can dash around while channeling the attack, so you may get the damage boost from Blitz without having to stop channeling. The best hammers for Moros have to be Sudden Burst first and foremost to get those Omega attacks pumping out quickly, then maybe Hidden Helix or Clean Helix for convenience. This is probably the simplest weapon shown here and really doesn't require all that much to feel strong, so if you're just wondering what a decent aspect is without all the fuss of getting particular boons or having to pull off some crazy button combinations, I think Moros is the choice. Charon. Yeah, that's it. Okay, just kidding. There's a bit more to Charon, but I definitely felt like it was an easy choice for which aspect can deliver the most possible damage for the axe. First, let's talk about something that will make Charon a little bit easier to use. Yes, you want to simply put down your cast and then charge up your Omega Special to explode it. However, you can actually dash while charging that Omega Special in order to stay safe without interrupting it. It'll be a bit of a stretch for your thumb, but once you get used to it, you'll never be able to go back. Now for the build. I think your best option is to start with Poseidon's Keepsake, partially because his cast is quite strong and pairs well with a weapon that lets you drop your cast more frequently, but even more so because of his secondary cast boon, Geyser Spout. This is the most important part of this build, and you must get Geyser Spout if you really want this build to pop off. You'll also need some good magic regen and hopefully some other cast boons along the way, of which there are plenty. Here's the ideal order of boon gettage. Poseidon's Cast, Apollo's Magic, Regen, Lucid Gain, Geyser Spout, Demeter's Special just for the second curse for origination, and the fact that she has some other neat cast boons. After that, some cool boons to get could be Supernova, Prominence Flare, Local Climate, Arctic Gale, maybe even Glorious Disaster since this is the one exact use case for it. The throwable cast boons are pretty great with Charon as well. Glowing Coal and Lightning Lance let you stay at a distance and deliver some additional damage from your cast. There are a couple of nice hammers for this build, but not many, I'm afraid. Giga Cleaver for doubling your Omega Special, and Sudden Cleaver just to make it go faster. Giga Cleaver is actually pretty insane since you can actually squeeze a second cast onto the ground after the first Omega Special triggers your cast, allowing the second Omega Special to trigger an additional cast. It's tight, but very spicy. 18 Celsius, I think I need a blankie for that point. Come on, what's happened? Okay. Now, this is the most broken build in the game. It is so ridiculously overpowered that legitimately you could just take random boons and still absolutely demolish the base game. I am talking about an aspect of Medea. The easiest way to explain why is to simply read the description and notice that it gives you plus 90% attack and special damage right away. Now, there is a bit of skill behind the weapon since the button presses required are a bit precise. The idea is to load one attack at a time and then immediately special after each one. So what I do is slide my thumb across my attack button into my special button on the controller to get the desired effect, rinse and repeat. The faster you do this, the safer you will be since you can keep enemies staggered this way. Don't worry about loading multiple attacks in at a time and then going for one big explosion. Oh, and don't forget that simply using the special helps you get your shells back as well if they're far away. Now let's discuss the build. This may come as no surprise by now, but starting with Zeus's special is particularly potent and can lead to multiple duos that will dish out a lot of damage. But let's narrow in on one that is a bit difficult to get going, but is so worth it. Anus Affront. So you should start with Zeus's special, then you'll have to get Ares' attack so that you have a way to apply wounds to enemies. Then you'll need to get at least one of only 3 Vengeance boons in the game, namely Divine Vengeance or Light Smite, or ideally both long term. Don't bother aiming for Visceral Impact from Ares, it's absolute garbage. The cooldown on Heinous Affront might look bad, but it's actually per enemy, meaning that if you go around and apply wounds to each individual enemy in a room, they'll each get struck by your Vengeance boons. This is particularly insane with Light Smite because this boon has a massive AoE size and will hit pretty much every enemy in a room every time you trigger Heinous Affront. Some other good boons to get along the way are Grievous Blow from Ares for a chance to deal double damage, Double Strike from Zeus to help with your Blitz and Divine Vengeance, and maybe Storm Ring for just an all-around decent cast boon. Now, if this wasn't ridiculous enough, you could get the Possessed Array Hammer and start exploding Omega attacks all over the place just from retrieving your shells. It does require a lot of magic though, so you'll probably want Born Gain with a lot of max magic. Even if you don't have the magic to fully support it, it's still easily the best hammer for the weapon, and maybe even the best hammer in the game. Another thing about Possessed Array is that it can trigger certain other boon effects like Fine Line, Ocean Swell, and Weed Killer, but it doesn't take the extra magic from them. The next best hammers are probably Boosted Ignition or Colossus Driver. Oh, and don't bother with Wide Grin, it's a complete trap. The coat was a slightly tough choice, but after some experimentation, I'm pretty comfortable in saying that Shiva is the aspect to go with. Plus, at least one of these builds had to include Apollo's cool-ass legendary. So the basic premise of Shiva is to chunk out an Omega Special from a distance. Oh, chuck. So the basic premise of Shiva is to chuck out an Omega Special from a distance, then run in and start charging an Omega attack inside the circle. This way you can build up some stacks of destruction from the aspect while charging the Omega attack, but don't worry too much about getting maximum value from this mechanic, just try to stay safe and stand in the circle when possible. Since you'll be going back and forth between Omega Specials and Omega attacks, it's really important that you take the Knight Arcana card since 20% crit chance on these two moves is incredibly worth it. You can easily take off the Huntress for it in this instance. Now for boons, you'll want to start with Apollo's Keepsake so that you can start working toward his legendary either way, plus if you take either his attack or special, the AoE is out of control with this, but I do prefer the attack overall myself. You'll also be spending a lot of magic with this build, so you need to prioritize getting a magic regen boon quickly. A good Lucid Gain works and slots into getting Apollo's legendary eventually. Otherwise, Born Gain works as per usual. By the way, the best familiar to take for any of these builds is going to be Hecuba if you're spending a lot of magic, or Rocky if you're not, essentially. So now you'll need a third Apollo boon, like Extra Dose, which doesn't affect your Omega attack, but what can you do? Then you'll just have to pray to these dirty gods that you get the legendary after that. Now, it's typically much easier to get a legendary boon on the surface since you can manipulate the first zone to give you a lot of boons from the same god, but that's for another video, I'm afraid. Other boons to consider are Weed Killer from Demeter for more Omega attack damage, maybe Slow Cooker from Hestia, and a bunch of fire element boons to up your base damage, but that's kind of it. Of course, make sure you have a good way to keep 2 curses going on enemies either way. And once you have the Apollo Legendary, you will start absolutely blowing up the enemies like crazy. This build probably has the best potential for seeing the highest single damage number. For hammers, the coolest one you can get is World Collider for a massive power boost. In case you need a refresher on how power works, it will increase the base damage of the move it outlines, which will then get multiplied by your other damage sources, such as Origination, Strength, the Destructive stacks, etc. So ideally you have a good balance of plus power and plus percent damage in any given run. Other decent hammers are Rapid Frame for faster Omega attacks and Siege Frame for a general boost. Alright, those are my choices for the most overpowered builds in Hades too, but some of them were close calls, honestly, and I could probably put together another list if y'all were interested, so make sure you let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see another one. As always, thank you so much for watching, and while you're at it, maybe like and subscribe, just this once. For Daddy.